In the galaxy-spanning battleground of the far future that Warhammer 40,000 takes place in, there are countless alien races that either fight for dominance over others or fight simply for their own survival. And in the channel-spanning catalog of the present day that is my YouTube channel, I've spent about 98% of my time talking about only one race in 40k, the human race. And I mean, if you've been a viewer of my channel for any considerable amount of time, you'll know that I am unapologetically pro-human when it comes to the various factions of 40k, but today, it's time for a change. Just for today though. We'll be back to our regularly scheduled human supremacy-oriented programming in the next video. But today, I'm going to cover a character who is, without a shadow of a doubt, not only one of the most important characters in 40k, but also one of the funniest. Weird, creepy, terrifying funny. He's by far one of the most powerful beings in the galaxy, and literally spends 99% of his time trolling. And 1% of his time saving the galaxy. Let's talk about the only Necron that I have ever actually liked, Trazyn the Infinite. The easiest way to describe Trazyn the Infinite is by saying that he's a 70-ish million-year-old robot alien who is obsessed with yoinking everything and anything he thinks is cool or valuable from around the galaxy and taking it back to his planet-sized museum to display it for eternity. I like to imagine that when they were coming up with Trazyn as a character, that Games Workshop thought to themselves, "Right lads, let's make a fella who's a personification of the British Museum. He'll trek around the galaxy, give everyone who gives him a spot of bother a good wallop, talk a load of rubbish, hit 'em with some cheeky bants, and nick all their finest bits and bobs." Oh, by the way, the second largest percentage of my viewers are from the UK, so for all of the Englishmen watching, I hope you enjoyed seeing your beautiful culture displayed on my channel just now. I'm not going to go into too much detail on the entire Necron tier to Necron thing in this video, because I'd like to do a dedicated Necron history video in the future, but we'll still do a brief little recap here. Long story short, before becoming the Necron, Trazyn the Infinite, that we know today, Trazyn was originally a Necron tier scribe and archivist who oversaw the mummification of some of the highest ranking members of Necron tier society. For anyone who isn't familiar, the Necron tier were who the Necrons were originally. They were an alien race of flesh and bone, but their flesh and their bones were really weak and shitty because they were constantly being bombarded with immense radiation from the star around which their planet orbited. For the longest time, Necron tier society was largely based around the fact that they were all going to live short, painful lives and die horrible, painful deaths. As a result, Necron tiers such as Trazyn were very important, as they worked in granting high-ranking Necron tier a dignified passing. Eventually, the Necron tier advanced to the point that they were ready to venture out further from their cursed homeworld. They became a spacefaring race, their ships clad in the living metal known as necrodermis. While on their galactic voyage, they encountered the Old Ones, a race of immensely psychic, functionally immortal geniuses. The Old Ones had essentially accomplished everything that could have ever been dreamed of. They had created the original webway, a psychic construct of interdimensional pathways that interlinked countless points throughout the galaxy, allowing for unhindered travel. They lived long, fruitful lives. They had even grown to the point that they had begun to seed worlds throughout the galaxy with new races, who would then evolve and gain intelligence. The Old Ones were truly beautiful. And the Necron tier absolutely hated them. Imagine the entire existence of your race is just death and sadness and pain, and then you meet another intelligent species, and they've just been having the time of their lives for millions of years. They ended up having a huge war against the Old Ones, known as the War in Heaven. The Old Ones used the Eldari, whom they had created during the war, while the Necron tier were able to use the power of the Cadian, vast beings of pure energy who are said to be as old as the universe itself. And when the Cadian told them that there was a way for them to achieve immortality and gain an upper hand against the Old Ones, they were eager to oblige. However, the Necron tier had been short-sighted and too quick to agree to this plan from the Cadian. Oh man! The process of biotransference that each Necron tier underwent transformed them, allowing them to leave behind their doomed and diseased bodies and be remade into a body of necrodermis, living metal that could move freely and self-heal. But as each individual entered the biotransference forge as a Necron tier and emerged as a Necron, one thing was missing: a soul. You see, the Cadian were, believe it or not, pretty devious. They originally had survived by feeding off the energy emitted by stars, but eventually realized that there was much greater sustenance found in devouring the souls and life energy of living beings. And as the entire Necron tier race dedicated themselves to immortality, their souls were stripped from them, and the Cadian gorged themselves on Necron tier life energy. Only the strongest-willed Necron tier were able to keep any semblance of their own conscience after biotransference. The rest were all reduced to mindless servants. The newly empowered Cadian and the now immortal Necrons were able to finally extinguish the old ones, either dooming them to extinction or forcing them to flee the galaxy. The Necrons, actually, were also eventually able to defeat the Cadian, trapping shards of their essence in Tesseract labyrinths, small, fist-sized cubes that contain a pocket dimension. Yeah, I don't know what any of that means, so we're just going to leave it at that. So, let's recap. The Necrons had finally defeated the Old Ones, who they had started a huge war with just because they were super jealous and salty of them, and then they'd also defeated their Cadian overlords and even harnessed their power for use at a later time. But at this time, the Old One's most gifted creation, the Eldari, began to dominate the galaxy, and so it was decided that the Necrons would enter what was known as the Great Sleep. Billions upon billions of Necrons would enter a tens of millions of year-long stasis, buried deep within the crust of their tomb worlds, spread across every corner of the galaxy. And now this is where we come back to our boy Trazyn. He awakened from his slumber a bit earlier than planned and immediately set back to the work he had been doing before the Great Sleep began. Solumnness, the tomb world that he rules over, houses his vast galleries which contain displays from across the galaxy. So why has Trazyn dedicated himself so fully to documenting and displaying literally billions of subjects from around the galaxy? Well, he believes that once the rest of his race reawakens, they will be more than happy to spend some time touring his planet-spanning museum, expanding their minds and becoming more knowledgeable on everything that they missed during their slumber. It's important to remember, though, that 99.9% of the Necrons that will reawaken are nothing more than mindless drones, so his extensive work might be lost on a lot of them. And then also, pretty much all the other Necrons that actually are, not mindless servants and can think for themselves, hate him and want to destroy him forever. So it's probably more accurate to say that Trazyn dedicates himself to his work simply so that he doesn't lose his mind in his immortality. Throughout the seemingly infinite halls of the Solumnness galleries, one can find living artifacts collected from around the galaxy. You might remember my last video, which was about the Raven Guard. And in it, we talked about the drop site massacre on Isfon 5, where the Raven Guard, Salamanders, and Iron Hands were ambushed by their traitorous brothers. Yeah, Trazyn has some Raven Guard and Salamanders that he straight up yoinked from the battlefield of the drop site massacre and brought back to Solumnness. Not only does he have captured Space Marines, he also has Chaos Marines, Guardsmen, Sisters of Battle, Eldari Warriors, and Tyranids, amongst countless millions upon millions of other living subjects. And yes, I did say they are living. Using Necron technology, Trazyn is able to freeze his displays in time, keeping them in an unending stasis and pausing their consciousness. In doing this, he's also able to change displays around at his whim, customizing them to provide the most memorable museum experiences for his guests, of which he has none. He also has plenty of items and displays of non-living things. His collection of documents is said to rival that of the Black Library of the Eldari, the greatest collection of knowledge in the history of the galaxy. He has the preserved head of Sebastian Thor, the humble priest of the cult Imperialis who brought an end to the horrific age of apostasy. He even has the dead husk of an enslaver, a terrifying warp-based creature that exists only to latch onto the soul of a psychic being and turn their body into a warp portal to allow more of its kind to spread through reality. In my mind, though, the most compelling specimen that Trazyn has collected is one that has the potential to change the future of the Imperium of Man forever. Trazyn holds in his collection a perfect, uncorrupted clone of Fulgrim, Primarch of the Emperor's Children. Since the Emperor had gifted his sons with the capacity for genetic memory, this clone of Fulgrim was also born with all the memories of real Fulgrim's life, including the Great Crusade and the Horus Heresy. The creator of this clone, Emperor's Children Chief Apothecary Fabius Bile, was fascinated that this clone of Fulgrim expressed deep regret and sorrow regarding real Fulgrim's actions during the Great Crusade, falling to chaos on the planet of Laren, and even beheading his brother Ferrus Manus. He vowed to make things right, to atone for his sins and his betrayal of the Emperor. And so, Fabius Bile then gave him to Trazyn in exchange for a shitload of Emperor's Children gene seeds so that he could keep doing crazy chaos stuff, and Trazyn put Clone Fulgrim in a display on Solumnness, where he remains to this day. And knowing Trazyn, Clone Fulgrim isn't leaving that display anytime soon, if ever, unless it's to be moved to another display. You see, Trazyn doesn't really like releasing any of his displays back into the galaxy after they've been collected. He doesn't even really like leaving Solumnness himself. He actually prefers spending his time working away in his galleries, surrounded by his liberated historical collections. I'll be honest with you guys, something I often find difficult to convey through a lore video is the personality of whomever I'm talking about. But I'm going to try my best to do that here because like I said in the beginning of this video, Trazyn is one of the funniest characters in 40k. Does he crack jokes? No. Does he find humor in things? No. He's a soulless robot that regularly causes mass devastation on planets on a whim and kidnaps the survivors to imprison for eternity. So, he's funny in a way that makes sense only in 40k. In the novella War in the Museum, Trazyn finds himself in his gallery under attack by Orican the Diviner, another Necron who also staves off his immortal boredom by being a massive troll. To combat Orican and bring the devastation he's caused on Solumnness under control, Trazyn is forced to awaken two Sisters of Battle. They are Clara and Satine Fontaine, orphan sisters who were recruited by the Adeptus Sororitas and fought in the Dominion Squad before Trazyn kidnapped them and made them into an exhibit. He awakens them, and Clara immediately attempts to kill him, but finds herself unable to, due to the mind shackle scarab implanted in the back of her neck. Trazyn begins to explain the situation to the sisters, that situation being that there is a very sizable collection of Tyranids, including a hive tyrant, who have managed to become freed from stasis and are now threatening to kill everything they can. Clara is immediately distraught. "Where is my sister?" she demands. Trazyn gestures at the woman standing next to her. "That is not my sister," she says. "What have you done with her?" "Ah, I had forgotten," Trazyn replies. "Your sister was sadly not recoverable, and I had to substitute a stand-in to complete the scene." "She is dead, and I am alive?" Clara asks in disbelief. "We swore an oath we'd die together." To which Trazyn then replies, "If it makes your grief easier to bear, your sister's corporeal form is not entirely gone. You have her right hand, for instance, plus one cornea and most of her organs." Believe it or not, Clara doesn't take this information too well. She actually, if you read it, you'll find that she takes it a lot better than you would imagine to find out that your sister who you thought was alive is not alive, and then you have most of her organs and her hand and one of her eyes in you. She essentially just starts berating Trazyn, accusing him of corrupting the human form, which was deemed to be perfect in the Emperor's image. And then Trazyn just straight up starts arguing with her. Like, this guy is tens of millions of years old, releases a human who he kidnapped and put all of her sister's organs inside of her from stasis, and then just starts arguing with her, while a fucking hive tyrant is loose in the gallery. He also promises never to return Clara or the other Sister of Battle back into the display if they are successful in helping him defeat and recapture the Tyranids that are loose in the museum, and he stays true to his word by putting them in a new exhibit with the hive tyrant after they help him defeat it. Classic Trazyn. Interestingly enough, though, Trazyn also demonstrates a level of respect, I guess you could call it, when talking with non-Necron individuals. And generally, races in 40k treating other races with even a modicum of respect is pretty rare, especially when one of those races are the Necrons. During the war in the museum, Trazyn is also forced to awaken a captured Adeptus Mechanicus Magos, who specialized in the study of Tyranids, to help him. To his credit, the Magos is actually unbelievably chill about the whole situation he's in, being trapped on an alien world and being kept in unconscious stasis for eternity. And interestingly enough, Trazyn is also very kind to him, even referring to him as my friend. After being reawakened, the Magos requests that once this whole ordeal has been figured out and Trazyn puts him back in stasis, that he leaves him conscious so that he can spend the next century or so in silent contemplation. And to Trazyn's credit, that's exactly what he does. This ordeal that required the help of the Magos wasn't Trazyn's only interaction with the Adeptus Mechanicus. In fact, during Abaddon's 13th Black Crusade in 999 M41, Trazyn would join forces with none other than Archmagos Dominus Belisarius Cawl in the defense of Cadia. Now, to be clear, Trazyn decided to become involved simply because he feared that a chaos victory over the galaxy would make it harder to collect new specimens for his museum. Even then, though, having one of the most powerful and capable individuals in the galaxy fighting on the side of the Imperium was pretty sick. After one of his relics, the bell of Saint Gerstal, began blaring an alarm, Trazyn was forced to investigate. It blared 13 times, signaling the coming of the 13th Black Crusade, and after tossing the alarm through a webway portal in annoyance, Trazyn began to investigate what exactly was happening. He eventually figured out that the first and most violent point of contact for the 13th Black Crusade was the Imperial world of Cadia, and after gathering some important display pieces and storing them in Tesseract labyrinths that he could yeet at any foes he might come across, he made his way to the Imperial world. Once there, he made contact with Belisarius Cawl as he was trying to work out how to use the Necron-constructed artifacts now known as the Cadian pylons to counteract the effects of the warp and keep the Eye of Terror at bay. Though their alliance was a very uneasy one, they were able to work together, with Trazyn helping Cawl to familiarize himself with the Cadian pylons, their level of technology far surpassing that of the Imperium's. And although Cawl was able to get the pylon network functioning for long enough to begin shrinking the Eye of Terror itself and forcing the Black Crusade forces to retreat, Abaddon the Despoiler decided to pull out his secret weapon. He decided to throw a Blackstone fortress known as the Will of Eternity into Cadia as an artificial meteorite, which honestly actually worked out pretty well for Abaddon. Not great for the defenders of Cadia because it completely wiped out the pylon network, killed most of the defenders on the planet, and allowed Abaddon's forces to capture and conquer Cadia once and for all. And, as Lord Castellan Ursarkar Creed, the greatest human defender of Cadia during Abaddon's siege, felt the numerous wounds he'd endured slowly drive him towards the point of unconsciousness and death, who else would appear before him than everyone's favorite robot? Trazyn had found his latest addition for his galleries on Solumnness. So even though he does decide to help out when absolutely necessary, it's important to remember that Trazyn holds nothing more dear to his non-existent, soulless heart than the countless millions upon millions of things, living or not, that comprise his endlessly expanding collection. And do you know what I hold more dear to my heart than anything else in the galaxy? My incredible channel members. If I were a massive, metallic, museum-maintaining maniac, you would be my most magical, meaningful, magisterial models. Thank you as always for your support, which has been as undying as Trazyn the Infinite, I guess. If you'd like to become a channel member, you can do so through the link in the description. And if you made it all the way to the end, nice. That's pretty cool. Until next time, thanks for watching. See ya!